this is what I've been thinking about this whole conversation is like culturally, what are the main differences you see between comics and rappers or street dudes, I guess? Like from your perspective, what are the key factors that separate one type from another? Because from my perspective, and I'm ignorant, but feels like in the comic world, violence is very infrequent. And when it does happen, it's relatively minor as opposed to rap, which has a storied history of bullshit.
Yeah, we comedians are different. First of all, we're not hotheads. If somebody got a problem with somebody, that's been brewing a while.
Because the number one thing that's embarrassing for a comic is to get offended, to take it personal. To be the dude who gets mad first is typically the one who loses in an exchange
of words
with comics, right?
Jones is, yeah.
Whereas a rapper can get mad as that's just that's part of the character.
But what's funny is comics, most of us attacks a rapper. We way more healthier.
Okay, yeah.
And if you could just pull up comics boxing versus rappers boxing, it's a whole different skill set. Like we look way more coordinated.
You think?
100%. I'm a comic that box, so I know for facts.
I feel like a lot of comics tend to be like pretty out of shape, pretty.
Who are the comics you talking about? Youngers or the old ones?
I guess older ones. I mean, I feel like with a rapper, there's like a sense that if you become a 400-pound fucking walrus, that your career is over. Whereas 400-pound comic, literally, I feel like if you weighed 400 pounds, everyone would think you were funnier. And I don't encourage that at all. And obviously, you have a fan base, but that is funny, right? You don't think?
It's like, it's a lot of big ass rappers out right now.
That's true. You are from the city of Big X.
a lot of big rappers. Yeah. Man, but comics, if we're into it, it's really behind something personal. It's not about the art. It's about something that was said or done behind the scenes that we viewed as some non-manly shit or some non-female shit. Like what you on, bro? Like it would be something, but it's not a lot of comedy beefs. Right. And then it's really not. It's like
you really think that? Because I feel like in the modern podcast comedy era that we live in, that I feel like I see a lot of people kind of not getting along and trashing each other. And especially with so much of comedy becoming about podcasting, it feels like it's less like who's funny and more like who has the best, most durable personality in general. And so many of these fans, like when you watch these sort of podcast criticism channels and stuff, it's like the fan base in large part wants to pick apart comics and figure out who's real and who isn't. In a way that is very natural to hip hop as well. But I feel like that's just such a big part of comedy as it's kind of entered into so much of it being about how these people get along on podcasts.
So your podcast and Vlad are the most spicy podcasts that I even come across. Most of the comedian podcasts, who's like the ones that's inciting things. Like I've been on a lot of comedians podcasts, from Big J to Rogan. Nothing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I don't
I feel like a lot of the fans, it becomes so memorable when you have like a Brendan Shaw, Bobby Lee type situation, because it's just catnip to the fans. I mean, that was their, well, it's probably not fair to say that's their Kendrick and Drake, but that kind of thing. Like it just sucked the air out of the room. People were so excited to see these big names sort of go at each other.
like,
but they don't get that much of it. It's less. Yeah.
Like Bobby Lee, I love Bobby Lee, but it wasn't.
He's not Drake. Not fair to give him that.
No, that wasn't fair. Man, so Dan Soda, I've been on Jim Norton, like Ari Shaffir. Shane Gillis is not into it with nobody. You know, it's Dan Soda and Shane Gillis showed up. Like, so cause we do Mom's House with Tom Segura. Like, who was when we talk about podcasting, who's into it? 5150 with Corey Holcomb. Like, you know, Corey is talking about somebody, but he's not really into it with anybody. And most of the big time comedians don't have podcasts.
That is true. Yeah. Although I feel like their visibility is probably hurt as a result, because so much, I feel like there's so many people, myself almost included, who will gladly watch comedians podcasting together and have comparatively very little interest in stand-up. I feel like that's increasingly like very normal.
Yeah, like Chappelle doesn't have a podcast. Eddie Murphy doesn't have one. Martin Lawrence, Cat Williams, Steve Harvey, Cedric Entertainer, Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx had a channel which he was putting all kinds of. Kevin Hart has a channel he's putting everybody on, but the huge ones, I don't have a podcast. That's not the job. But Naeem and Spanky and Willie Lynch Jr. and Delay and none of these guys are into it with anybody. But now we look at, as soon as rappers get together, it's a bunch of hoopla. Now, the independent world has made New York rappers get podcasts together. Yeah. Because they were so separate. Now you got Joe and Jada Kiss. Yeah. You have Nori, Joe Budden, and Cameron and Joe Budden and his crew. You have all these other people, but are they into it too? They get into it sometimes, but it's not the root of most of it, and it's never violent. By the time you get to be a podcaster, and I shouldn't say never, because someone died over the Troy Ave versus Tax Stone beef. Yeah, but by the time, these are dudes who Nori. I mean, read Prodigy's biography if you want to read about Nori being a fucking hothead psycho when he was younger. But by the time he gets to the podcast part of his life, that's mostly in the rear view. Yeah, it's like, man, Nori. I would love, man. Nori is a good dude. I talked to him one time, but Mo Amer is not into it with anybody. With anybody. Right. It's like, so, and going back to Spinning the Block, Toby Nwigwe is is a huge rapper. Saturday Night Live, on there with Justin Timberlake, Reebok commercials, touring himself. You don't spin the block. And he's huge. So when I think about how people try to go, was Guns N' Roses ever into Metallica? Like, and they had huge.
Guns N' Roses were into it with, was it just Nirvana, or like there was some really good beef with them, but
Nirvana came way too late to be into it with Guns N' Roses.
No, you're right, but who did I watch a documentary about the other day that they were talking about their beef with Guns N' Roses? What bands did Guns?
What was Duran into it?
But back in that era, like, that kind of says a lot. Yeah, Nirvana's the number one that comes up on this list. Motley Crue
was crazy.
They did beef with Metallica. Cause during their co-headlining 1990 tour, Metallica's James Hetfield was injured by pyrotechnics, and Axl cut the GNR set short, causing a riot in Montreal. Okay.
I don't even think that was his fault.
But I feel like back in the 90s and shit, it's like people still had that same desire to see famous people beef. They just had so much less of it to work with. And now we have the opposite, where it's just like infinite, people documenting different confrontations.
Are you into it with Vlad?
Can you imagine how interested people would be if I was? No, not at all. But like for sure, like that would be when people who don't pay attention to me or Vlad at all, if we were beefing, for sure would start tuning in to just see these white boys going at it.
Yeah, I've seen people come in your podcast, and I'm like, okay, I wondered. I said, was it staged? Somebody had to let them in because I know they have security. And saying, yo, Adam, if I'm not, I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm saying, but I know nothing's going to happen. You too patient. You're like, and what? And okay.
Okay, so you just saw the clip, but did you know that you can watch this entire interview right now before it's released to the public, uncensored, by becoming a member for just $5 a month, and there's a lot of other crazy benefits as well. So make sure you hit the link down in the description and sign up. Appreciate y'all.